So let's just dive right in with a massive question. One we've been asking ourselves for, well, forever. What actually makes us smart?
I mean, think about it. We are a species of incredible contrasts, right? We can build spacecraft that travel to Mars, we can map the entire human genome, and yet, our brains are so easy to fool. We fall for simple optical illusions and cognitive biases every single day. So what on earth explains this paradox?
On one hand, you have these just monumental achievements, things like vaccines, instant global communication, breathtaking art and music. But on the other hand, the science is really clear. Our individual reasoning is just riddled with irrationality. So how can we be so brilliant and so fallible at the exact same time? Well, the answer seems to lie in two fascinating and at first totally contradictory ideas.
Okay, so the first answer suggests we might be looking in the wrong place entirely. Maybe the secret to our intelligence isn't actually inside any one person's skull. Maybe it's in the connections between us.
We all know this story, right? Historians call it the myth of the heroic inventor. You know, the lone genius, toiling away in a garage somewhere, who has that sudden eureka moment that changes the world. It's a great story, but what if it's mostly wrong?
Let's just look at the evidence for a second. For almost every major breakthrough in history, the same idea popped up in different minds, in different places, at almost the exact same time. Seriously, think about calculus, the telephone, even the theory of natural selection. The list just goes on and on. Now, this pattern isn't just a crazy coincidence. It suggests that the key ingredients for these big ideas were already out there, just floating around in the network, waiting for someone to connect the dots.
And this leads us to this really cool idea called the collective brain. The theory goes that our species' true genius isn't our raw individual brain power. No, it's our amazing ability to learn from each other, to build on the knowledge of the people who came before us, and to share and remix ideas in these huge social networks. You could say our intelligence is a cultural inheritance, passed down and added to over time.
And we have some incredible data to back this up. So, back in 1924, the US passed a law that severely cut back on immigration from Southern and Eastern Europe. And what happened to innovation? Well, in fields where those immigrants had been making huge contributions, patenting absolutely plummeted. It dropped by 2/3. And here's the really crucial part. It wasn't just that there were fewer immigrant inventors. Native-born Americans also became less creative, with their patenting dropping by over 60%. So when you shrink the diversity and the connectedness of that collective brain, everybody gets less smart.
So, okay, the case for the collective brain is pretty strong, but a totally different group of scientists decided to ask another question. What if there is something special happening inside our individual skulls after all? What if those individual differences really do matter?
To find out, they zoomed all the way in. I mean, past the brain itself, past the cortical layers, right down to the level of a single individual neuron. They used live human brain tissue, which was removed during necessary surgeries, by the way, and they were able to connect the properties of those individual brain cells to the IQ scores of the patients.
First, they confirmed what bigger brain imaging studies have shown for years. People with higher IQ scores did tend to have a thicker temporal cortex, which is a really key information processing hub in the brain. But the real question was, what does a thicker cortex actually mean at the cellular level? Turns out, it means bigger neurons. Specifically, what they found was that people with higher IQs had brain cells with way larger and more complex dendrites. Those are the little branch-like things that receive signals from other cells. So now we've got one theory saying it's all about the network, and another one saying it's about the size of our individual neurons. So, who's right? Well, here's the thing. What if they're both right? What if these two ideas aren't actually fighting each other, but are really just two sides of the same coin? This is where we get a really elegant, unified theory.
Okay, think of it like a computer. Over thousands of years, our culture has been developing this incredibly powerful software. These are our tools for thinking, like language, math, logic, and scientific concepts. This software doesn't live in any one mind. It's stored in the collective brain of our whole society. Now, through things like school and just learning, our individual brains download the software. But to run that software, you need hardware, and that's where our neurons come in. And what that second study suggests is that people with larger, more complex neurons, basically better hardware, might be able to run all that cultural software a little faster and more efficiently. So you see, it's not the network versus the neuron. It's a partnership between the two. The collective brain develops the amazing software, and our individual brains provide the hardware to run it. You absolutely need both to get the kind of intelligence that we see in humans. One is pretty much useless without the other.
Which leaves us with a final, fascinating question, and it kind of reframes our whole idea of what a genius is. Maybe a brilliant mind isn't someone who invents ideas from scratch, but someone whose neural hardware is just exceptionally good at downloading, processing, and recombining the ideas that are already out there in the collective brain. What do you think?